welcome to Horror Score. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Jesse with you again for episode 7.
Wait, I want my name to be green this time because of the bog monster.
Happy?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're here with episode 7.
Yes, Bog Creatures.
Yep, there sure was a lot of bog creatures. What do you got any opening remarks about this movie before we get into it?
Don't watch it with like your brother or your sister because there's an uncomfortable brother and sister relationship in it.
All right.
A for real opening remark though is I had this beer waiting in the fridge, Bog Monster. We keep insisting on calling this movie Bog Monster because of the beer, but I thought it paired really well if you're like a double IPA fan. What did you pair with this movie?
I decided to make a drink that my buddy Dirty Mike invented years ago. It's called the Bobby Mike. Now, to make a Bobby Mike, you just need a couple of ingredients. We've got the Kinky Blue, Kinky Pink. You can substitute the X-rated liqueur for this, and some pineapple juice, and a little bit of coconut rum. It's 1 part of each, and then you top it off with this. Do you want? And there we go. So again, this reminds me of the Bog Monsters. It looks disgusting and it tastes all right. So my recommendation for a drink to pair with Bog Creatures, the Bobby Mike. So a couple of things about this movie. This has, I would say, the worst, or maybe not worst, underwhelming on-screen death I've ever seen.
Well, first of all, we own this movie, right?
Yes, this was our first watch.
Explain how you acquired this movie.
My friend Horror Movie Mike. That's 2 references to different nickname Mikes so far this episode.
They're different.
They're different people, not the same person. He gave me this movie. I'd broken my ankle and I was home, and he thought maybe he would cheer me up with this movie. And it sat on my shelf with my vast collection of horror movies until today when we watched Bog Creatures. Yeah, could have waited another 4 or 5 years. I guess.
Picked this one, and I can't help but feel responsible.
If you look at the cover is great. I don't know why I didn't watch it sooner, but unfortunately that creature on the cover is not in the movie.
Exist.
Can you describe these bog creatures? All right, we'll do it in the villain section. Let's get on to the scoring. We'll get us that much closer to the villain section. So as always, we've rated this movie on 5 categories, each one totaling up to 20 points on varying degrees of excellence. First category?
Story.
All right, let's start with story.
What did you think about this story? Of this movie that has a story. It has that.
Yeah, you got 5 unlikable college kids doing some kind of backyard archaeology using regular garden tools, and bog creatures of Vikings come to life and kill everybody by pushing them to the ground. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit more exposition, but
right. What did you give it?
I gave it a 5. I gave it a 5. It was followable, very underwhelming, but I was able to follow the plot despite the fact it doesn't go very far.
I also gave it a 5. I thought it was like there's like this weird that this director is just really angry at people who go to college because there were so many one-liners about stuff. There was one in particular that was like, she just like slit somebody's throat or something, and then she said, "Not bad for someone who didn't go to grad school." And I was like, what? What does that even mean?
Yeah, okay, I remember that.
And then there was another college thing. The guy's sister was like 16 and she had already gotten
she was a doctor, right?
PhD.
They every opportunity they were like, "Oh, she's a doctor." Yes, she's a 16-year-old
And she had like
doctor.
very much judged for it. It wasn't like even like an accomplishment. It was like, this chick wasted her life.
Now we move on to the second category, villain. Tell everybody what you thought of the villain.
I love a good villain. But this villain was brought to you by Michael's Craft Store because it was just people in like canvas shirts with washable green paint on their faces and like fake flowers and vines, like masking taped to their head.
Yes, some I would say piss poor zombie execution. And again, the cover, I think the cover's great. The artistry on the cover, I was like, these monsters look pretty cool. Not what you get inside the movie.
So I gave it a 3.
I gave them one higher. I gave them a 4. I gave them
You're too
I gave them a
generous.
4. I've seen worse.
So in this story, I don't even know if the bog creatures are like the bad things. So they're on this archaeology dig that they just call science. And they're just using these giant broad brush paintbrushes to like brush dirt away.
And they also hate it.
They immediately
hate being archaeologists.
They hate it. They did not. It's like they're grounded.
They search from. They're working for like an hour, and they're like, "This sucks."
No. They start digging a hole, and immediately one guy's like, "Oh man, this blows. I could be in your tent eating your panties right now."
And that happened.
Because that happened. Like I ate a woman's thong.
There's a reason for it, I guess. It's a very very loose reason.
But back to the villain. So they dig up these bodies that are Vikings and bog creatures that have been...
Yeah, they became bog creatures.
They've been well maintained, preserved.
Well, there was a curse.
Well, they were preserved because of the bog.
Right. The cursed bog.
Right. But then, like, the women who come out of the bog, like, those creatures aren't bad.
The movie arbitrarily gives you a couple good zombies who can talk, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, if you want to stop us, you got to do this thing.
Don't go out there. I'll go."
Sometimes the bog's better.
Sometimes the bog's bad.
In this case, the bog was not better. The bog was worse for an hour and 20 some odd minutes.
Okay, well, let's move on to the horror category.
I have a lot to say about this category. For a horror movie, there was very low horror. Most of the movie took place during the day with lots of lush green fields, forests, people wearing brightly colored clothes with blue skies. Did not really set the stage, and occasionally there was just like a bog monster like looking from behind the trees.
Behind the tree.
Like, you don't really get
just a patch of moss on his face.
Like the He-Man action figure Moss Man. You don't get a lot of bog monster action until halfway through the movie, and that's when you get the most underwhelming death that I have ever seen. A bog monster like pushes a guy, and I was sitting there and I was like, "Is he dead?" And like, he's not dead. I'm like, they must have captured him.
And then a few minutes later in the dialogue, they're like, "I can't believe he's dead."
Yeah, pushed over to death. It's part of the curse of the bog. And you want to add anything to the horror? I gave horror a 4, by the way, out of 20 points. I felt that there was not a lot of horror. There was a point where they were held up, locking themselves in a room, and there was some bog monsters trying to get in, and it was nighttime. It had some horror elements there, but that's it.
Like the main horror element that was in here was that they all knew that they needed to go, but every time they determined that or decided that, it was like too late in the day. Well, we'll leave first thing in the morning.
We're going to leave this castle tomorrow.
If I had to hear the phrase, "we're going to leave first thing in the morning" one more time.
Yeah, I mean, it was, probably half a day's walk to town, I guess. But and they slept too late because they're college
kids.
But
it was always light out, so I don't know why they didn't have the time then.
Yeah, and I don't see these bog monsters climbing trees either. They could have, hiked for half a day, climbed a tree.
This isn't like a dig that you're invested in. It's not like, I got to finish this job. No, you don't even want to start the job. So I gave it a 3. I think there was a sacrifice. Maybe. I don't know. It was terrible.
Effects.
So the effects were so bad that they couldn't even keep track of when it was night and day in between shots.
That's right.
So we would be camera would be on one person, it would be high noon. And the camera would switch to another person, shadows all over their face, it's clearly 5 p.m.
There was a part in a tomb where it was nighttime outside the tomb, and they go down into the tomb, and there's sunlight pouring in through the window on them in this dark tomb.
It was rough. I usually media is usually my highest category for movies. So I gave it 5 points.
I also gave it 5, but surprisingly, the acting wasn't as bad as I would have expected. Having watched the whole movie, looking back, some of the acting was was fine. The set, they had access to a castle. There was like a nice castle that was supposed to have just been unearthed. Like that was a weird plot point. They were like, we excavated this entire castle, and it's just this beautiful, nice castle,
but like surrounded by forest.
Yes, in the
like. I'm like, what?
100 years ago, there was a landslide that buried this castle.
Yeah, right. Like, I'm just imagining them with like their big paintbrushes, unearthing this castle.
So Valborg Castle looked nice. So at least they had this cool castle to film in. Yeah. So that's how they got a 5 from me.
How about the good old S factor?
It was low for me too. I didn't mean to score movies so low. This is going to be my lowest overall score so far. I know it's only episode 7 and had to happen at some point, but I gave it a 4, and that's because there was like 4 flashes of nudity in the first couple of minutes and then nothing for the rest of the movie, as well as some cool Viking action. But then the camp, the humor, the originality, it all dries up real fast. But the box art, maybe they got a point out of me for the box art.
So the exact reason that you just gave it S factor points, with them flashing the nudity in the title screen, that is the exact reason why they scored so low for me. Is because don't like tease that there's going to be a bunch of like naked women running around in a movie if there isn't going to be. So the first 5 seconds of the movie, we haven't even gotten our footing yet. We haven't even met any characters. And we have this kind of historic flashback of this Viking raid thing. And all of the women are being like taken and like killed and everything. And they're naked and they're just like running, like topless, completely naked. And no other boobs. A guy eats a pair of underwear in this.
Sort of an uncomfortable scene.
It was not like, it was great. It was like the only redeemable scene.
Maybe that's where all your points came from.
It did get 5 S factor points from me because, so whenever the professor is doling out this big responsibility, like the dig of a lifetime for archaeologists to these students, he holds up the tiniest spiral-bound notebook I've ever seen and said, "This is my life's work," and puts it on the table in front of them. And that's supposed to be their guide. And I was like, I bark laughed. I was like, your life's work fits into that tiny little notebook.
And it was one of those 1 subject notebooks too. It's not like it was. It wasn't a 5 subject notebook. It was just
79 cents.
Yeah, at Walmart, in September, back to school.
So this one was hard to nail down because the story was really hard to nail down. But I'd say that a group of underachievers was hired to go broadly do some science in a field by digging up dead bodies with paintbrushes.
So for me, this movie rakes in 22 points out of 100. That's where I scored it.
It got 21 out of me, and it would have been lower if that little notebook hadn't been in there.
So that gives us a combined score of 21.5 horror score points. I'm going to say watch it anyway, because I think that horror is an art form. You might like this movie more than we did. Who am I, right? Who am I?
There are so many paintings I can like point you to that won't take an hour and a half of your life that are still art to be admired.
It has very few redeeming qualities, but for me, it's a 1 watch. I may never see this movie a second time. What about you?
I for sure won't. Unless that thing happens to me like in A Clockwork Orange and scientists are like taping my eyelids open and this is the movie that they put on.
Well, there you have it. So in short, watch it or don't. And that's all we have for you this week. We'll see you next time.
Stay spooky.